All right, we are coming back, and this is a big thrill. And since we've debuted Tri-City Sports Now a couple of months ago, we've had some real big guests on. Steve Spurrier, Vince Dooley, Jackie Sherrill have been some of my favorites, but this one I think is also in that league, if not greater. He is, in my opinion, the best general talk show host on the radio in America, coming to us from WTAM 1100 on your AM dial out of Cleveland, Ohio. He has been the voice of Cleveland for about 20 years, and there's simply nobody better to talk to us about the World Series and what it means for the Indians to be playing for the world title in the sixth city than Mike Trivisonno. Mike, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. I know years ago I used to do a Marty Allen impersonation on your marathon show. You're definitely a mentor to us, so welcome. But I guess the first question, very easy going. What is the scene like right now in Cleveland, Ohio, with the Indians 81 outs away from a World Series title?
Well, before I answer that question, I should have hired you as my agent after that introduction.
Well, it is certainly heartfelt. The honesty, the beautiful go-get-'em voice, and I mean, just the clarity. I've always enjoyed your show. You know that. I remember back in the 90s, I was a Steelers fan, not a Browns fan, but I would always listen to your show because it always had the best information on the AFC Central and the old Browns-Steelers rivalry, the first Browns, and even the march you did to try to save the Cleveland Browns years ago. It's something that I wanted to do here in Johnson City a long time ago when we lost our college football team for a period of time, East Tennessee State. I know how effective it was when you did that march to show the NFL that Cleveland was an NFL city, and of course the Browns did come back a few years later. But just the question stands, what is the scene like right now in Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, again, before I answer that question, you're kind of right and you're kind of wrong there, because technically, I mean, the Browns came back, but as far as NFL football, they haven't come back yet.
Well, yeah, that's, I guess, the one playoff game, a disappointing one in 2002, doesn't necessarily equate the old Paul Brown and Blandon Collier years. But nevertheless, if you can tell us, I know that we've been looking at it on Fox and all this. This is a series like no other, Mike.
This is a series that I'm pretty sure will break all type of records as far as people watching and people paying attention, whether it's on the internet, which now you can watch baseball games, or whether it's on your phone, or whether it's on television or listening to it on the radio. I think everybody in the United States of America that's a baseball fan, and even some people that aren't baseball fans, will have an interest in this World Series, because the Cubs haven't won in 108 years. The Cleveland Indians haven't won in 68 years. In my opinion, the two best teams are representing Major League Baseball this year. The Cubs out of the National League and the Indians out of the American League. And I think it's just drawn a tremendous amount of attention, because one of these teams, one of these cities, one of these franchises are going to break their losing streak. And that's 68 years for the Indians, 108 years for the Cubs. I mean, this is a historical World Series. And here in Cleveland, to talk about what it's like here, I mean, for baseball fans, I mean, people can't even sleep. I mean, people can't even, they're pacing in their house. They're telling me stories where they have radios on at different points of their house, and they just pace back and forth during the game. I mean, that's a baseball fan. To a sports fan, the Cavaliers have just won a championship. The Browns aren't very good here in Cleveland. So it's big also to a sports fan, but maybe not as big, if you get my point, to baseball fans. And there's a lot of baseball fans in Northeast Ohio that are absolutely, positively going crazy. In fact, when I get done with this, I'm headed to Progressive Field. That's where I do my show from 3 to 6 this afternoon. We'll have all kind of Indians people on and stuff like that. I was there yesterday. I never seen anything like it. And even Tom Hamilton, who does the play-by-play for the Indians, said on the radio last night, it's louder now than it was in '95. So the people here are going absolutely crazy.
You mentioned how for a sports fan, how the Cavaliers and now possibly the Indians could win the World Championships in the same year. I became a sports fan, Mike, if I can give you a personal anecdote, when I moved at 8 years old to Pittsburgh, and it was the year the Pirates won a World Series and the Steelers won the Super Bowl. I knew nothing about sports before I came there, but it's that, corridor that Frank DeFord says, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, more sports fans per capita than any other area in the country, according to DeFord, and it really got you caught up. Now, what'll it mean for Cleveland, which, for so long hadn't won a title, to be called the City of Champions if the Indians can get past the Cubs?
Well, it'd be huge. We haven't won anything. The Browns, the last time we won was the Cavaliers never won till last year in the existence, and they came in 1970 was their first year here in Cleveland. The Browns haven't won since '64, and the Indians haven't won since '48. So you get two winners basically in 1 year here in Cleveland with the Cavs and the Indians. I don't think the people are going to know how to handle themselves. And one thing I take a little offense to, and not you, I'm just saying to say, what does it mean to Cleveland? The hell with Cleveland. What does it mean to the people? I hope that's what people are talking about. The city, it is the city, but the people are the ones that really put their heart and soul into this. And, I'd rather hear people say, what does it mean to the people, rather than what does it mean to Cleveland? I know that's just a little technical phrase there, but I get a little touchy with that, because if it wasn't for us fans, trust me, these athletes, some of them would be making $18 an hour. The fans are the heart and soul of sports, and these type of championships are so important. Now, somebody that doesn't root for sports, they're going, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
Hey, I got to pay the electric bill. I got to worry about my kids. Yeah, I understand that. But there are sports fans, and we use it as a release. We use it as entertainment, and we really get a kick out of it. And it's huge if you could get two teams in this area to win a championship in the same year.
I also feel it helps define an area's culture, the people's culture, if you will. And, of course, we are hearing, semantics from Mike Trivisonno. This is the talk show host that insists on saying to his callers, not you're on the air, but you're in the air. We are talking to, as I said, I think the best general sports talk show, or he's not sports anymore, it's general talk show host in the country, Mike Trivisonno, WTAM. But there are going to be some critics there, and they're going to point out that the Indians were 28th in attendance this year. Why do you think it was so late for the Cleveland fans to catch on to the Indians this year?
Well, that would take probably an hour and a half to explain, but very briefly here. Number one, they didn't have an attendance problem. They had a weekday problem. Their weekday attendance is horrible. Their games start at 7 o'clock. You have a family. I know it's the same way in other cities, but we only have so many people here in Northeast Ohio. We don't have tens of millions of people like in the Chicago areas or the New York areas or the LA areas. So you got to get home. You got to get your kids, and you got to get to a ball game downtown in traffic by 7 o'clock. People that work until 4:30, 5 o'clock, by the time they get home, it's 6 o'clock. Now they got to change, get dressed, eat, grab the kids, and hurry up downtown by 7 o'clock. So it's a little bit of a weekday problem. The weekend attendance was tremendous. We were over 20,000, if I'm not mistaken, every Saturday and Sunday and Friday night for the Cleveland Indians. Also, the television ratings and the radio ratings are at an all-time high this year, so people are paying attention. And the other reason, just to add another one in there, you only have so many dollars to go around.
Yeah.
And the Cavaliers, the average family, they can't afford to go to a bunch of Cavs games, and a lot of people did last year because of their run and winning a World Championship. That takes away from the other teams. The Browns, they got 8 home games. That's an event. So, you only get 8. Imagine if the Indians only had 8 home games. They draw 400,000 people a game. So, of things that go into play on why the attendance was down. But you should see the place now, and you say, well, you're playing for a World Series. You're playing in the playoffs. I understand. But standing room only tickets, are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Standing room only. $1,000 a piece at Progressive Field for this World Series.
I heard that there were parking spaces going for $100, which I personally think that's criminal. But I'm one of these.
Right around the ballpark, all the parking, $100.
Yeah.
Most of them you can't even get in.
And, yeah, I mean, I was always a guy who, when I was up in Cleveland, I used to, they don't charge for parking on the street in the weekends, and, would go walking blocks and blocks and blocks to find that space and such. I mean, that tells you about me. So $100 for a parking space, I just can't believe it. But, you mentioned the Cavaliers, and I think that they would have had a lot of the attention of that region's sports fans during the season, and that might be one of the reasons for some of the low Indians attendance. But, LeBron James, here's an interesting guy, because when he in his first tenure with the Cavaliers, it was almost like he didn't necessarily embrace being part of the community. You were very critical of him for wearing the Yankees cap to the Indians playoff game. Then you had the decision. But then he returns and brings the championship to Cleveland, Mike. And so there's kind of a maturation here. Can you comment a little bit about how LeBron James has been, the cycles that he's gone through in popularity there in Cleveland?
Well, number one, let me just start this way. I'm not a fan of his. I don't like him. I root for the Cavaliers. I don't root for him.
Okay.
Number two, you're exactly right. The reasons I don't like him is he showed up when we were playing the Yankees in the playoffs in 2007, I think it was, with the Yankee hat on, at
yes.
an Indians game.
Yes.
I mean, that was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. And then the way he left Cleveland and not even telling the owner and announcing it on television like that was another slap in our face. So just the way God built me, I just have that gene inside of me that once you do something like that, I'll never forgive you. And we're talking here sports-wise. I mean, I don't hate the guy as a human being. I hardly even know the guy, okay? I'm talking as far as sports goes. I can't stand him, and I never could root for him because of what he did when he was here. In my opinion, the reason he came back was all selfish. He was losing endorsements. He was looked at as the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden now he's the great guy. He's the good guy. He's coming back home. He's the savior, okay? That in my opinion, that was all, personal gain. It's not that he wanted to play here. He wants to play where he can win a championship. But coming back here and being the savior really helped his image a lot. So, again, I'm not a LeBron fan, and that only goes, I don't know him personally. I'm not talking about him personally. I'm talking about it as far as the world of sports. That's one of the things I don't like. Somebody will call me up. I'll say, I hate LeBron James, since we're talking about him, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean in the world of sports. I don't mean as a human being.
Yes. Yes.
I hate the New York Yankees. That doesn't mean I hate the New York City and all the people in it. Mm-hmm. I just hate the Yankees because they beat our ass for so many years here in Cleveland, you're talking sports, not personal. So I'm not a big fan of LeBron James.
I see what you're talking about right now, and I know that you have always been a critic of LeBron. Just going on that theme, though, after the decision, I always thought that, to go to Miami to win a championship, that in the way you're doing it almost devalued the athlete winning the championship. Do you think that the way LeBron James went to Miami, you used to talk about quarterbacks. Oh, Bradshaw, Montana, Brady, they all have 4 rings. They're the best of there were, or something of that. Not necessarily looking at the stats of, say, a Marino or a Manning. Do you think the way that James won his championships in Miami may have lowered overall our perception of the ring making the athlete great?
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm not as big a sports fan as I used to be. I just don't like what the sports has turned into, I should say. I don't like the way the organizations treat the fans. You were just talking about $100 parking a little while ago. Now, is that the organization's fault? No. But, I mean, it is in a way, too. I mean, Also, too, I mean, standing room tickets, $100. I mean, $1,000 for a World Series game. Meanwhile, fans of support. I just don't like the direction of sports. I don't like free agency. Look what Golden State is doing, and Durant did. So, I mean, a lot of people have done this. I just don't pay attention to sports as closely as I once did because I just don't like the direction of it. I really don't.
Yeah, it's
so now they're talking about in the NBA, since we're on the NBA here, it's all, well, what's the key now for the Cavaliers? Well, you got to rest these guys. They've turned the regular season into an exhibition season. I mean, 16 teams make the playoffs in the NBA. So the regular season, what the hell? Why even watch it? Cavaliers are in the playoffs before the season started. Turn it back on in April.
I've had this same belief, and I think it's even worse in college basketball here in the Tri-Cities when we have mid-major teams. They play an entire season, but you've got to win those 3 games in the conference championship of, say, the SoCon in order to make the NCAA tournament and even get a low seed there. Again, the regular season does become nothing really but an exhibition season, a matter of seeding for a conference tournament. And really, we know that the Lakers, for instance, this year, they're not going to make the NBA playoffs this year. The same thing goes with the NBA. Hey, last question here while I have Mike Trivisonno of WTAM. I do want to ask, if it is the Cubs this year that do come away, how devastated will the people in Cleveland be? Because I know that they've had such a renaissance in the city to become sort of the 6th city again. But what would it mean if the Indians did fall to the Cubs in the series?
Well, that's a great topic, and I've asked on my show the same question. Now, for me, it'll be devastating. When you get there, and now we won the first game, I mean, you got to win this thing now. We were there in 95, we were there in 97, and we should have been there in 2007, but we blew a 3-1 lead against the Red Sox, okay? 3 games to 1 lead. So, for me, it'll be devastating. For some people that have called in, they said, hey, I can't believe the Indians got this far. This is in their eyes, it's a success already. So, I mean, it depends on who you ask. But for me, if you're asking the question, if we don't win this World Series, I'm going to want to throw up.
Well, the thing is, going up against the 2 big pitchers, Arrieta and Hendricks here, and the Indians against the Blue Jays, I think they only hit 168. So what do you think the chances are here for the next 2 games?
Oh, man, we're tough at home. I mean, we beat Leicester last night 6-0, and we're just tough at home. And if we can win this game tonight, take a 2-0 lead in this series, steal one in Chicago, it's pretty much our World Series from there. So I think there's a lot of pressure on the Cubs. I don't think the Cubs want to go down 2-0. And the way the Indians right now, see, unless you're watching them every day and literally listening and watching, they are playing defense like I've never seen a team play defense before. Mm-hmm. They are playing. They've made 1 error so far in 9 playoff games, and that was by a pitcher on a ground ball back to him. They're running the bases, and their relief pitching with Andrew Miller and Cody Allen is just unbelievable. And their starting pitching, well, what they got left after all the injuries, is really damn good, too. So, I mean, they're playing baseball right now like the game is supposed to be played. They're a difficult team to beat. Ask the Red Sox, ask the Toronto Blue Jays. They were both favored against the Cleveland Indians. And the Red Sox didn't win a game, and the Blue Jays only won 1.
Yeah, you mentioned the defense. I know the play in the 7th inning where Rajai Davis caught the fly ball and threw home instead of trying to double up Schwartzer at second. I thought, if they get the double play there, Cubs actually probably get a run with Zobrist scoring from third. I mean, he had been tagging, and if he goes all the way, he's probably got enough time to score. So that play actually, just the way it's been falling for the Indians, that play probably preserved the shutout. Hey.
And you got to see Lindor play shortstop.
Oh, yeah, I know you're a fan of his.
Oh, my God, can this kid play the position? And since we moved Ramirez to third, I mean, and then Kipnis at second, Napoli at first, And our catcher, Roberto Perez, looks like Johnny Bench defensively, I'm talking about, not offensively, even though he had a big offensive game last night. Defensively, I mean, we're so solid defensively, it's scary.
Well, you know why he hit the second home run last night, of course, Mike. Madden took out Justin Grimm, who's just 25 miles up the road from where we are here in the Tri-Cities in Bristol, Virginia. So that's how Perez got his second home run, and it took out the wrong pitcher. But other than that, hey, we've been talking to Mike Trivisonno here, who is, and I guess you sense it here, just the man's man talk show host, the voice of Cleveland. There can be no question about that when you hear his accent. Mike, thank you for joining Tri-City Sports Now. It has really been a pleasure. And, hey, I hope you enjoy the rest of the series.
And thank you very much for having me on.